You probably have a decent amount of monthly subscriptions that you're spending money on every month. Entertainment, organization, cloud storage, meal deliveries. You may even be spending a lot on the software and technology that runs your company. So, how can you tell if you're actually getting a good value? I'm Josh, software exec, former startup founder and consultant, and on this channel, we crack open the secrets of the software industry. Today, I'm going to share a three-step process used to evaluate and optimize your software tools, whether it's on a $1 million tech stack level or your own personal subscriptions. It's a framework used by many teams across Fortune 500s to make sure they're getting the best value for their tech. So if you're anything like me, you probably have a bunch of subscriptions, maybe Netflix, Amazon Prime, possibly a meal delivery service or a meal prep service. I see those advertised all over YouTube these days, and I've never used one myself, but they do look pretty cool. But just like you have subscription services, you might even struggle to decide which ones to keep and which ones to drop occasionally. Companies at every level have the same problem, but at a massive scale. Utilizing software for accounting, lead generation, project management, ERP, that means enterprise resource planning, communications like Slack or Teams, and their manufacturing process, not to mention cloud hosting like Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform, and many more that I probably missed, and hopefully you'll point out in the comments. These subscriptions aren't at a 5 or 10 or even a $15 a month value. Any of the softwares listed above could potentially get you into the hundreds of thousands range yearly, so a critical exercise to evaluate what you're using regularly and determine if you're seeing value. But that can be a tricky job because a lot of factors come into play. It's an exercise that can grow rapidly in scope as you try to account for different factors and apply different value metrics. There's a few core concepts to keep it simple. And the key tenet to all of this is that software should be giving a higher value return than it costs. So that's your ROI, or return on investment. But it's obviously not that simple because each piece of software you use doesn't have its own line item on the revenue sheet, right? Value can be measured in time saved and hours worked, or security and data privacy, preventing data breaches, which could cause costly legal fees. Data accuracy in saving when and how you purchase materials. You get the idea. So that's where that three-step process comes in that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. What is the secret three-step process? It's going to go map, measure, optimize. So let's break that down. First, you're going to start by mapping your business goals to your tech. And this is the first place where people tend to go off the rails because it's really common to just start with a list of tools and go point by point down that list. But what we want to do instead is lay out our top 3 to 5 business goals. Maybe those come from your OKRs, or maybe they're simple like customer growth, internal efficiency, optimizing manufacturing costs. Either way, we lay out the business objectives and then we map them to the tools that correspond to those business outcomes that they support. For example, Salesforce is tied to customer growth. So you're starting with your business outcomes, not the tools, and asking, does every major tool we use tie clearly into one of these goals? Right? If your CRM isn't helping you grow or retain customers, why is it there? And if you've got something that clearly isn't tying into one of your business outcomes, that's already a red flag for that tool, right out of the gate. So once you have your business outcomes and your tools map to each outcome, we can get on to step 2, which is measure. And that's where that cost benefit analysis comes in, getting the return on investment for each of the tools listed out in step 1. So it's easy to get that investment column. You know what you're paying yearly or monthly for each tool and piece of software that you use. But how can you calculate the return? Right? We already have the tool mapped to the outcomes, so that's going to make it easier. Something tied to increasing revenue as an outcome has an easily measurable dollar value return. Something tied to business efficiency, on the other hand, has a measurable return based on hours. So for example, something like your CRM, that can be pretty easy, right? It's leads tied into automated outbounding, which in turn turn into like revenue per customers, or customers flagged that are at risk, for example. For some, it's a bit harder, right? So a lot of software is about time saving, and you need to evaluate the amount of time you're spending in the application, whether it's by you or the team, and then multiply that by the cost. For example, your project management tool, say you're spending 100 hours a month spread across the team at approximately $40 an hour employee cost. So $4,000 a month of time then is going into that application. You then need to compare that against the cost of doing the same process without that tool, or maybe the free version, And maybe that means Google spreadsheets are on a whiteboard in the office. So for that same project management tool, what's the same cost if we tried it on whiteboards or switching to the free version? That includes time lost on integrations and automations with like double entry, loss of data. Now, you're not going to get an accurate count for that, but it is going to be an estimate. On the flip side, if you're seeing insanely low usage on any of your tools, that's a red flag because it means it's not being used effectively, if at all, and it might be an easy drop because all the work is probably already being done somewhere else. You got one person of your 10-man team logging into a project management tool once a month, it's probably being underutilized. So now some softwares make this really easy. For example, if your manufacturing software allows you to dig into material costs or cost of goods types of things and giving you an easy to read and actionable metrics, that's going to be a huge green flag and a value that you should be counting because you're probably losing out on that value if you weren't losing that platform. So that brings us to the third step, which is optimizing. Here, we're going to find what underperforms, what overperforms, and what is a potential bottleneck or an area of frustration for the team, as well as the potential for integration. So from that second step, we know where our winners and losers are on ROI. So we can drop or reduce the spend on some of those underperforming tools and potentially reallocate some of that to spend into tools where we're seeing really great performance, knowing that there's some additional opportunity there. We can also use this step to find areas of, for lack of a less overused word, synergy between those tools. And what I mean by that is a lot of tools have integrations with other platforms where automations can be set up to save time, double entry, remove bottlenecks, things like that. So for example, Slack channels can often integrate with your CRM, automatically creating or updating contacts and items. Or your code repository like GitHub can probably integrate with your project management suite like Jira or Monday.com to automatically create tickets and flag fixes and versioning and all that great stuff. So this is a great opportunity to identify that potential for synergy between platforms. And if you happen to be evaluating an underperforming tool, seeing if there are automations or integrations available, or maybe even different options of those tools that have those missing integrations is going to be a great option. So that's the basic methodology, which can be applied at any level from enterprise all the way down to your personal subscriptions. But what would that look like if it was applied to your own subscriptions? So some of it is obvious. Productivity tools like Microsoft O365, subscription cost, and what usage you're getting out of it. For instance, similar with cloud hosting, maybe you're paying for a terabyte of cloud storage. How much time is that saving you compared to putting everything on physical media, finding your disks, drives, uploading, keeping track of it, cost of physical media backup, storing, all that stuff. It's pretty obvious. But things like entertainment are less so. How do you put an ROI on entertainment? And to some degree, you don't. Because entertainment has a personal value to you. You're not watching Netflix to make money. It's for fun. And to a certain point, if you're trying to min-max and calculate ROI on your entertainment, you're probably losing the point. Or maybe that is the point. Maybe that is your entertainment and you enjoy doing that. In which case, you could technically use the same process. In that Netflix example, you track your Netflix usage. You know the cost monthly and the hours of entertainment you're getting out of it. And then you compare that to the equivalent cost of renting those movies or even going to the theater. In the same vein, validate that you're spending enough time in the app to make the monthly cost worthwhile. But again, unlike a project management tool or CRM, that baseline usage, that's subjective to the entertainment you're getting out of the platform. And what is that worth to you? So that's the video. If you found that helpful, please like the video. If you've done software audits on a business level or even in your personal life, I'd love to hear about it in the comments and the different methods that you've used. And if you'd like to see more videos on software and the tech industry, follow along with the channel. There'll be more coming soon.